Welcome to the Monsters, Madness, and Magic podcast. I'm Justin, joined by my co-hosts Jason and Marcus. And this evening we have a very special guest with us, veteran voice actor and voice and screen actor, the Scion of Balance himself, Mr. Simon Templeman. Simon, how you doing tonight?
Very good. Nice to be speaking to all three of you. Yeah, and I know you're going to ask me lots of very detailed questions about the games and the motivations of the characters and what were you thinking when you said this line, and it's going to be like a complete blank as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, terrible, isn't it? I know, I've been totally busted.
Oh, well, let me just throw out my questions here.
All right, yeah, go through them, and it'll be the same answer. I really can't remember, but I'll do my best. Go for it.
Well, I think I speak for all of us when I say it's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's nice to be here. It's nice to get out of the house.
Yeah, this is the best we can do in these times, right?
It is. Yeah.
So initially, what made you want to pursue a career in acting? Was there a performance you can point to and you had a eureka moment, and that's where you decided that this is what you wanted to do with your life?
Yeah, there was really. I could be sort of glamorous and say it was watching Ian McKellen at the Aldwych Theatre or Patrick Stewart or those guys at the Aldwych Theatre, but it was seeing my aunt, who was in an amateur dramatic society, I guess you call it community theatre, right, of this cheesy play called The Holly and the Ivy. And I guess I was about 7 or 8, and I thought, that looks so cool. And also, I think I was a terrible student. And acting kind of answered all the questions that I was asking myself. It seemed to be sort of glamorous, and there was a kind of fantasy to the whole thing. I remember it touched a really sort of powerful chord in me, however cheesy this play was and however awful they were. My poor Aunt Phyllis, she'll be revolving in her grave. But yeah, and I guess, and there was a theatre near where I grew up. I grew up outside of London in a town called East Grinstead in Sussex, which was about 30 or 40 miles from London. You get a train up. So I had access to theatre, and that first, I must have been 7 or 8 when I saw that production, and then I started getting interested in it and going to see plays at the Royal Shakespeare Company. When I was older, like 16, 17, I'd drive up to London and see those sort of actors, people like Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, those guys. And it was a sort of golden time for the Royal Shakespeare Company then. For me, it was, there was a director called Trevor Nunn, who was probably a Sir Trevor Nunn now, but he had this idea of a corps of actors, like a company of actors. So it's like a team. And the idea was basically that everybody was kind of interchangeable. Sometimes you'd be playing like lead parts and other times you'd be playing smaller parts. But that idea of a kind of team that you'd shone, everybody have their moment within a group really appealed to me. And we're talking probably like late 60s, early 70s. I'm 65 now. So that idea of, a kind of community, and it wasn't sort of commercial. It wasn't interested in so much in making money as developing an art form or revealing these plays to people. That really appealed to me. So I guess that really started. And then I was lucky enough as a teenager to be involved in something that was called the National Youth Theatre in England. And basically that was, it was in the summer. It was a program that you go and perform sometimes new plays, which were written specifically for a bunch of teenagers, which was something which was new and exciting to me. And then they used to do productions of Shakespeare plays with a bunch of teenagers in too. And they had, there's been some really fantastic actors have come out of that sort of program. I'm blanking on most of them now, but people that I really looked up to. So I got involved with that, and that was in the summer, and it was great fun. And I think I learned a lot, and it made me want to pursue it even more. So I went to drama school, and then I did a bunch of theater, and then some television, and and it kind of it went from there. It seemed to be a sort of natural course to it. When I was a teenager growing up, there were a lot of local repertory theatres in England. So it was a bit like, you could start off in some smaller little theatre somewhere, and you could try and sort of work your way up to the big leagues, a bit like baseball, or soccer as it was in England. You try and get in the Premier League. So, you'd start off in some little rep theatre somewhere. And it was a good way of learning what being an actor was all about. So you'd be on stage for, like 6 nights a week, and you'd be doing 8 shows a week, and you'd change and do, a new show every 3 weeks. So you'd be rehearsing one play, you'd be performing another one at night. And then just in terms of like, as a young actor who's trying to get experience, I was really lucky to have that. I think you learn a lot of lessons, about being on stage, about what that was like working with other actors, and trying to work with better and better people. So, if you'd see how these really fantastic actors managed to do a great deal with very little effort, and that to me was always just brilliant. You'd see these people who were filling these enormous theaters, whether it was, like the Olivier at the National Theatre, or it was the Aldwych at the RSC when I was watching plays then. And they would seem to fill these huge spaces with what they were doing with such sort of economy and style that I thought I would like to try and emulate them, So that's a long-winded answer, but basically that was what it was. It sort of started in theater, really.
And that company of actors approach, the Swiss Army knife approach, it has to help the performance. Everybody knowing each other and each role that in depth.
Yeah, I think so. I think there becomes, if any complex endeavor, people find easier ways of doing it. And there was also another element which was really nice, is that for the audience who would go and see the plays, they felt they had a relationship with that company of actors. So you'd see them do different things. And I think that really, it was a two-way process. And as an audience, there was sort of pleasure in that, seeing Patrick Stewart doing one thing one week and then something else the next.
Right.
Great.
Did you have a favorite role to perform during your time in theater?
Yeah, I played a lot of like Shakespeare parts, which I really found, like a wonderful opportunity as an actor to sort of stretch. So like Hamlet, Romeo in Romeo and Juliet, those sorts of parts. You really learn about yourself as an actor and about, what it is to be on stage for 3.5 hours, sometimes more, each night. So yeah, I think Romeo and Hamlet, and there was a a new play I did by an English writer back in the 80s. He was called Robert Holman. He was a wonderful writer, and it was a small play called Today. And he was just such a brilliant writer. It was, if you just got out of the way and let his dialogue speak and try and make it as real as possible, it was a really good learning experience for me. Yeah.
Do you have any Simon Templeman tips for aspiring theater actors for remembering their lines?
for remembering them, yeah, I guess just repetition, really. Just do it as much as you possibly can in your head. Yeah, I think it's easier as younger actors when your brain is a bit fresher. Now I find it much harder to learn lines than I used to. But I don't do as much theatre now, so I can kind of cheat, and especially with the voiceovers, you don't even have to look nice. You just show up, and there's a bunch of very excited people in a booth, and there's usually a script and a coffee, so it's great. It's not too taxing. Yeah, I really enjoy them.
So at what age did you move to the States, and how was that transition?
I was on a tour of a play called Nicholas Nickleby. It was based on the Dickens novel, and we did it in 2 parts. And the whole thing was, the first part was 4 hours, and the second part was 4.5 hours. So it was 8.5 hours of theater. And we came to Los Angeles, and we did a run on Broadway in New York. This is in 1986, it was. And I met my now wife then. She picked me up in a bar, and that's it. That's the reason I'm here. So be very careful where you go drinking. But that was basically it. Yeah, I met my wife. She was doing a play in a theater which was part of the same complex. It's called The Taper in Los Angeles. And yeah, we met then, and we kind of managed to keep our relationship going for about 3 years. And then I moved out here. We got married in 1989. Mm-hmm. So we've been married for 30 years. And I've been here properly since then, Yeah, so this is home now.
What were the biggest changes that you found to auditioning in the UK and auditioning in the United States, if any?
Oh, I think I found it really hard. I found it a really big adjustment for me. I think it's just much more businesslike here. Everybody's like really on their game. Whereas in England, it's a little kind of clubby, or it used to be. And that can be sort of reassuring, but it can also drive you crazy because, the expectations are there. Whereas here, I feel if you go into the room and you hit it, if you get it right, you've got the job. Whereas in England, it felt like there were all these other factors involved, like, who's sleeping with who's,
right,
who knows who. And that, of course, that happens here. There's politics in anything. But I felt here was, in a way, it was sort of fairer, if that, however mistakenly that impression is. But yeah, and you had to be really like on your game, I think the best you ever had to be was in the audition and I'm talking for like, parts on television shows and things like that, if it's like the guest of the week, they probably see 30 or 40 actors, any one of them could do the job. So, you've just got it's a lot of luck too, but you've just got to feel you got everything going for you in that room at the time. And that was quite a sharp lesson,
Yes. So how'd you find your footing in voice acting from that?
Um, uh, how did I get into it? Well, I'd always loved radio. When I was living in England, I always listened to Radio 4 and the World Service. And I would go to sleep with the World Service on, which was a sort of news, entertainments and plays, a whole bunch of things, documentaries. But it was on the radio. So I love radio. So the idea of just hearing things, not like film, not seeing them as well, that really appealed to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when I was here, I knew somebody who introduced me to a voiceover agent, and they very kindly took me on. And I sort of tried to figure it out from there on. I think, as most actors do. I mean, some of the actors out here are these voice guys are brilliant. They'll have like they can do a radio show by themselves. They can have thousands of different voices and characters.
Right.
And I'm not that. I'm like a one-trick pony at best.
It's a hell of a trick.
Good. Yeah, I know. There's an actor here called JB Blank. I hope I'm screw his name up. But he does a lot of voiceovers, and now he also directs games. And he's amazing. I did a radio play out here with him, and he interviewed himself. As one character, he did this, and then it was amazing. So people like him, I have to wait till he's working, and then maybe I'll get a job, But there's a lot of guys like that. And I think being English, I had a sort of peg to hang it on, so they usually round up the usual suspects, and we see the same people in the corridor. But it's a sort of a way of getting in.
Right.
So it made it a little easier for me.
Is your preparation different when you prepare for a voice acting role as opposed to a screen or a theater role?
Yeah, it is, because you really for the voice stuff, you don't typically know what you're doing until you show up, especially for the games and stuff. They give you the script when you get to the session. And whereas if you're doing something on television, then you've got the script typically a few days at least in advance, so you have to prepare it, and you have to learn it. Whereas with the voice stuff, you're just in a booth. So it's a lot easier in many ways. But I like it. I really enjoy doing it, because it's like you're trying to, you kind of get into the groove of it a bit, and that's fun. And usually the people who make the games are, they're usually quite happy to see you, because they're not sitting there, writing scripts for 5 years or whatever. So it's kind of, they're pleased to see you when you get to the booth. So it's usually quite a pleasurable experience.
Right.
So that's nice. But yeah, it's very different than the TV stuff.
You've mentioned that, well, when you came in, you said that you listened to the T.C. Carson interview, and he mentions in that interview that he found the voice acting process almost therapeutic, that he could go into the room and transfer some emotion and into the character. He walks out and he feels a little loose and a little free afterwards. Have you had that experience yourself?
Yeah, that was nice. I thought, yeah, didn't he say he was going through a tough time or something?
Yeah.
He had a really tough year, and yeah, what a nice man. Yeah, I do. I think I think that's true of any acting, about also, I guess, any creative process, really, because it gets your full attention. And I think that is really, I think that's therapeutic in itself, because you
Right.
stop thinking about yourself, even though as an actor it's all about you. I think, you know, there are so many sort of paradoxes with acting. None of it makes any sense, you know. It's kid stuff, really. But there's, yeah, I think there is a kind of therapeutic element to it. The only thing with the voiceover stuff is that, especially with the games, I think you often end up dying, like, you know, 35 times at the end of the session. And usually there's, you know, like, can you give me impaled on a spike? You know, so you're, "Rah!" And then can you give me the, you know, you're dying in fire, "Rah!" You know, and then there's like 35, a list of ways you have to die. And they're all very loud and very screamy. So they usually try and save those at the end of the session, which is always, I think, very gentlemanly of them. And then so you come out, and then usually for like 2 or 3 days afterwards, I can't speak because I've lost my voice. But other than that, yeah, it is therapeutic.
So how did you get involved with Legacy of Kain specifically?
Um, I think that was one of the first games that I was aware of. And I can't remember the chronology of it. But I was looking back because somebody was asking me about that. And that may have been back in like 92, 93, unless I'm completely crazy. And I think that one, it was just an audition,
Mm-hmm.
and I showed up, and I remember there was a wodge of script. It was about 3 or 4 inches thick. And I went into this booth and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to go crazy. And I think the early games, everything was kind of vocalized, and, you know, it was written down. And now it's become a little bit more streamlined. The scripts are usually thinner. Yeah, that I think was one of the first games that came out. And I mean, when you look at it now, it's kind of like a little antique. You know, everybody's kind of moving around like that. You know, and they've become so much more sophisticated in terms graphically. You know, there it was a bit more like, I can't think of an analogy, but, you know, it was quite sort of crude visually. It was very,
Right.
you know, it was very two-dimensional. And now the graphics are so much sharper, and, you know, they're much more like movies. And I mean, I think movies and games are, you know, there's a place where they almost cross over, you know,
Definitely.
because the technology is almost the same, isn't it?
Games have become cinematic over time, I think.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the way they make those big movies now, there's so much CGI, so it's all digital. It's just
Right.
different ways of presenting it.
Right.
But you know, and that's, I mean, it's, for an actor, it's great. You know, it's an opportunity.
Right.
So, Simon, what specifically made you want to specifically get into video game voice acting? Like, what led you to say, I want to try my hand at the gaming voice acting?
Well, I wish, usually it's just, do you want to do this job? And I usually say yes. So if something comes up, especially for voice work, it's usually, do you want to do a session? You don't really know that much about it. It's just, do you want to do these games? So you just go in and do them. I can't say that it was I mean, it was all new then, especially when Kain was the Blood Omen and Soul Reaver and all those ones. It was all new, so it just felt like uncharted territory. Nobody really knew, certainly didn't realize how big they were going to get. And there was something sort of epic about them too, you know. So it was like bad Shakespeare. It was kind of, do you know what I mean? It was like, "Whoa, my lord," you know, and all that sort of stuff. So and there was there were big themes and lots of blood, and you know. So yeah, that appealed to, you know, some old ham like me. I don't know. So yeah, I think it touched a couple of sort of raw nerves.
Did you once you got introduced to that role of Kain for the first Blood Omen, did you initially see that series spanning into multiple games and products?
No, I didn't. I remember at the time thinking, oh, this, you know, this could be something. Somebody might really like this stuff, because it was all new and nobody had really done it before. And Amy, who was the sort of writer, was such she was so sort of studious and quiet. And I mean, she could have got a job in a library or something. She was just, you know, she was really kind of like modest and quiet. And she was writing all this stuff about, you know, people, you know, being impaled on spikes and this, that, and the other. And I thought, oh, I remember enjoying that, you know, and thinking, and she'd really kind of done her research, and she knew these characters and the story, and it was nice to be a part of that. And yeah, if you think you can solve somebody's problem, that always feels good, you know. If they were looking, I guess, for, you know, a voice, and if they think you're it, it's, you know, it's nice to be part of it. But I did think, yeah, this could turn into something. But I didn't realize that there would be, like, I think it was like 2 or 3 games altogether. So we come back and do more, and then it got more sophisticated and easier to do. That whole, you know, the 3 or 4 inches of script got much smaller, and the booth got bigger. So it was going in the right direction.
We've seen Kane's journey change through each game, and what I wanted to know, a question I've always thought playing these titles is, did you have any involvement with maybe his character development, or were you strictly just his voice actor?
Strictly the voice actor, because I you know, people have asked me about this just recently, and you know, so I thought, oh, I better know what I'm talking about. So I you know, I do these Cameo. There's this app called Cameo, where, you know, you get to say happy birthday as Kain to somebody, you know, stuff like that. So I think, well, I better know what I'm talking about. And then people will ask me will you, you know, give me advice as Kain, because I'm going through a rough patch at the moment. And I think, oh my God, they're asking me to kind of give them advice. So I thought, well, I better know what I'm talking about. So I looked up some of the Kain stuff, and I tried to cobble kind of a script together of what it was about. And I thought, if only I'd known that when I was doing it, I might have done a better job. But no, I was completely in the dark. So you just sort of, you know, take a stab in one direction and see what happens. And usually the people in the booth give you the indication that you're on the right track or the wrong track. But yeah, looking back, if you'd known the arc of the character, yeah, I think I could have, you know, I mean, it would have been better. I could have done a better job, basically. I wouldn't have screamed quite so much, maybe.
It's kind of surreal to hear you say you could have done a better job, when I'm pretty sure all 3 of us here think you did an amazing epic job.
Oh,
yes,
thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, you're very kind. But no, it was, yeah, it's all kind of immediate, and there's something also good about that as an actor, because sometimes your first instinct to anything, it was that Malcolm Gladwell book, Blink. You know, it's like you see something, you react. If you overthink it, especially somebody like me who has fairly limited gray matter anyway, you know, you're better off with your first instinct. And I think with those games, that was very much the case. You know, you see a line, you just jump in, you know, and see what happens. And as an actor, I think that is good. Sometimes I think if you overthink things, there's a sort of paralysis that sets in. I once did a play, and the play was 90 minutes long, and it was called The Dream Play, and it was by Strindberg, I want to say. And we rehearsed this play for 20 weeks, and it was 90 minutes long. So you need kind of deadlines, and because we thought, oh, we've got 20 weeks, so it's like to rehearse this play. The decisions we made were often the wrong ones because we had too much time to think about it. There's nothing like a deadline to focus your thinking on something. Right. And certainly if it's, you know, if you show up and you've got the script and you have to do it within 4 hours, that's a pretty sort of tight deadline. So there's not a lot of time to, you know, think about it. You just do it. And so I think that as an actor, sometimes that's very good, you know, depending on the material. But yeah, sometimes those instincts are the best ones. Mm-hmm. And if you overthink it, you can confuse yourself, which is poor excuse for me just saying that I don't have many ideas. There you
go. We touched on your Shakespearean origins and your theater origins. Personally, I can say when I played these games, when I was in an adolescent, early teens area, I wasn't necessarily attracted to the Shakespearean things in my English class. But as I grew older, I kept revisiting these games, kept revisiting the audio dialogue. I know sometimes in the day and age, people don't necessarily view video games as art, but I look at this series as art. Do you think this series could someday end up in like a literary English course or an acting course? Because I think this dialogue is very deep in the way that you, Michael, and Tony brought these characters to life. And one of the things I have to say is you guys brought these characters to life in a way I believe nobody had seen before or heard before.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, remind me to tell you about Tony, Jay. But Amy, the writer of those games, you could tell she was a really serious person, and she was really serious about what she was trying to do in a good way. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe they'll look back at them because it was one of the sort of early games. Maybe people will look back on them. It seems to have touched a nerve with people, especially, you know, it's like me when I was a kid going to see these heroes of mine, you know, in the theater. That's a sort of formative experience, isn't it? So it has all these associations attached to it. And that was, I guess, my feeling about Shakespeare is that it was part of my sort of teens and childhood. And I guess if you're playing those games, there are a time in your life, especially if you're, you know, in your teens or whatever, everything is really raw and new, and you know, it's like an imprint on you. And so yeah, I think they do become a part of people's, you know, consciousness. So yeah, I shouldn't, you know, I joke about it, but I don't mean to trivialize that experience, you know. Right. What I mean? Because I think, you know, people get a lot of pleasure and enjoyment and satisfaction from playing the game. So, yeah.
Okay. So to piggyback off that, since you did mention Tony, what was your relationship like working with Michael Bell and Tony J?
What? Michael has become a mate subsequently. He'll slide me a lot of emails and stuff. And but Tony J was he was I was thinking about him the other day. I came out here doing the play Nicholas Nickleby. That was in 1986. We did a tour of it. We went to London. No, we went to Stratford. We went to Newcastle. We went to Los Angeles and New York. And Tony was playing Mr. Crummles, who was the theater manager. And he was absolutely brilliant as this very pompous theater manager with this sort of, deep voice. And he was quite wonderful. He stole all the reviews. And I remember he was the voice of Martini Rosso back in London, back in England, many years ago. He had this try a taste of martini. It was an aperitif or a liqueur or something. And Tony was the voice of that. So I ended up getting to know Tony because we did this tour for like 18 months, 2 years. And he was such a great personality. He loved Los Angeles. He just loved the sort of opportunity. So Tony decided that this was very much the place for him when he came out, and we did this play in LA and then New York. And he went on to do, in the Disney movie, the cartoon, Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. And so so it was weird, like doing this game with him, a few years later. And I think there's a couple of things, I think I've seen them on YouTube where Tony and I are in the same session, and he gives me such a hard time. I can't pull any of my bullshit on Tony because he completely knows where it's coming from. But yeah, he was such a wonderful character and a wonderful character actor. So funny, so inappropriate and brilliant. Yeah, he was great. Yeah, Tony J. He's like the voice of God, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was funny.
And one of my last questions is Simon Templeman a gamer? Do you play any of the games that you voice?
I don't.
Wow.
I don't. I know, it's terrible, isn't it? I also think that if I did it would be such a rabbit hole. You'd never see me. My kids have got into, they're going to make fun of me. Is it Prisoners of Catan? Is that?
I don't know.
Complete blank look.
Yeah,
forgive me.
You got me.
No, it's probably obviously some game which I've mispronounced. But all I hear is them playing it, and I'm thinking, oh, okay. So if you haven't heard of it, maybe I've got the name wrong, or it's not that good. So no, I don't play it, and my kids didn't play them that much as teens. That wasn't their thing. So yeah, I mean, if you ask me any questions about the motivations of the characters, I'm completely stumped,
So at what point did you become aware of Kain's impact and popularity yourself? Like, whoa, this is actually something.
I remember I used to do these, they were like radio plays. They do them sometimes in Los Angeles, and they do a play and they present it on the radio, but you also perform them in front of an audience. I remember we did one play, it might have even been Dracula or something like that. It's for a company called LA Theatre Works. They're probably downloadable. But I remember getting a note backstage, and it was, there's somebody called the Dark Lord would like to meet you after the performance. So I thought, oh my God, how do I turn down the Dark Lord? So yeah, I met the Dark Lord, and this dude showed up in like cloak and the whole thing, and his kind of hair slicked back. I thought, oh my God, he was charming, of course, he was lovely, but the Dark Lord, really. So I thought, oh, something's afoot here. Clearly somebody's, they've taken off in somebody's imagination. But so yeah, maybe that was a clue that things were getting out of control.
I was going to ask, have you ever been approached by Audible, because you could make a killing reading Dracula?
Oh, yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Those, I like those Audible things. But I know there's like books on tape. But again, I think I was asked to do Tom Jones. It was, which is again, it's a Fielding novel, I think, and it's huge. It's like 3 inches in a Penguin copy, so it's like it's hours and hours and hours of dialogue. And I thought, if to do this properly, I'd need like 9 months preparing it, and then you're going to be stuck in this little booth probably for weeks. I think I would have lost the plot. I think I would have, it would have driven me crazy. So those people who do them, I really, really admire their kind of technique and tenacity.
You also voiced the World of Pharaohs audio tour in Vienna. How did that happen?
Oh yeah, I guess Fred Molina wasn't available. I don't know. I think I auditioned, and I got the right straw. But yeah.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. That's the wonderful thing about acting, is you never really know what's around the corner, which can drive you crazy, but it can also be such a kind of joy when something comes up out of the blue that you weren't expecting, and you're, flying off to some spot to do a job. I mean, that is one of the great things about acting, which I really enjoy. But it's a little bit of a drug, because you can get in love with the idea that a great job is around the corner, and then you're still waiting 5 years later and it hasn't shown up. So you got to be careful. But yeah, that was completely out of the blue, and yeah, I felt very flattered to be part of some fancy museum in Vienna.
Yeah, look, if I'm walking through a museum, looking at mummies or whatever it may be, there's no one I'd rather have talking to me than Kain,
Yeah, because it's the same voice.
Yeah.
It's the same performance. I've got one performance, that's it. It's the same voice, whatever it is, just louder or softer. Basically, that's it. Sometimes I'll change my hair, but other than that, I've got very little range.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Preach.
I think, yeah.
How selective are you when taking a role or a voiceover?
Unless it's something which is really, I mean, if it's a union job, basically, yes, I'll say yes, because you don't really know what you're saying, you're committing to. I mean, where I am in my career, I'm like a taxi for hire. If the yellow light's on and somebody, needs you, then you're gonna say yes. I don't really turn things down. I like acting, and I like doing things which I don't know how they're gonna turn out. So you go in with the best of intentions. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, but usually it works out okay. So I don't say no ever, basically.
I mean, that's a good way to keep a job.
But, yeah.
What type?
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, what type of presence did Amy Hennig have while you guys were recording the voiceovers? Was she there frequently, or just was she on the phone giving instructions, stuff like that?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was there all the time. I think for all of those games, and yeah, she's such a nice presence. you know, she's a very genuine person. She's not show busy. She's not fake. And yeah, it was, you know, I just wanted to make Amy happy, really, you know, because, and if you're working for somebody who you have a degree of respect for, that makes life a lot easier. And I always thought she was, you know, she had integrity as far as those games were concerned, and she had an idea of what they should be, and it was quite specific. So yeah, we've become sort of friendly. I haven't seen her for a while, but we had a coffee a few years back because she was living not far from me here. I don't know what she's up to now, but yeah, she was there a lot, and it was very much, it was her, you know, her sort of her baby, the whole thing. So yeah, she was very much in attendance, and she was great. Yeah, sure. I have fond memories of Amy.
Very cool. I always imagined she would be very hands-on with her work. Were you able to record any voiceover for the canceled Legacy of Kain Dark Prophecy game, or do you know anything about that at all?
No, what was that? Tell me about that.
It was a game developed, well, in development by Ritual Entertainment before they got funding pulled out from under them and they had to shut down. There's some screenshots online, but I was just curious as to if it got far enough along as to where you had to record any dialogue for it.
I don't think I did. I hope I'm not doing somebody a disservice. I don't think so. I don't think I was involved. Was Amy involved with those?
I'm not 100% positive on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't think I did, but also they may have gone in a different direction with new characters. So, you know, they may not have needed Kain. They might have used that as a sort of starting point for the game and develop new characters, which would make a lot more sense, you know, especially if you don't want to flog a dead horse.
Oh, well, Kain was allegedly the lead character of the game, but to your knowledge, has there been any behind-the-scenes activity regarding a re-release of any of the games at all?
Not that I'm aware of, but typically I wouldn't be involved in that process. You know, that's way above my pay grade. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I see. Completely understandable.
But yeah, but people seem to be very, you know, taking the games very much to heart. And as I say, I do these cameo things, which is a great way of giving some money to charity. So any money I get from Cameo, I can donate to, you know, a charity of my choice, which is great, you know. So you can do a little kind of message for somebody, or a birthday wish or something like this. And somebody asked me to do the final speech of Blade Runner. I don't know if you've ever
the Tears in the Rain speech.
Exactly.
Yes, it's amazing.
And, isn't it? It's
yes.
Brilliant. Somebody asked me to do this for them in the voice of Kain. So
that's awesome. That's a great idea.
It was really fun, you know. And I got my $35, which I can give to this charity, to give food for people who don't have enough food. So yeah, so it made me look at that Rutger Hauer, that speech. Oh my God, he was absolutely brilliant. Just so weird and wonderful. And that speech was fantastic. So yeah.
Simon, I saw an interview of yours from a long time ago where you said that you had
Yeah.
just started working on playing guitar. So what's your progress in those years?
Well, it's kind of plateaued out, you know. C, G, and F on a good day. Well, the reason I got into it was because I was often being asked to like play, you know, musicians, especially when I've got COVID hair, you know.
Right.
And I was always in LA. There's so many brilliant musicians and brilliant guitarists. And I would be like playing some English rock star or something, and I'd be the only guy in the room who couldn't play guitar. I mean, completely useless. So I started getting into it. It was a show called Just Shoot Me, and I was supposed to be playing this aging rock star who has a thing with Wendy Malick. And somebody said, "Oh, you can borrow my guitar." And it's the perfect thing for an actor, especially if you're stuck in your dressing room, you know, a lot. Yeah, I became quite obsessed with it. But I'm completely crap. I mean, it doesn't stop me, but you know, and I wait till my kids and my family leave the house and then I'll play. But I love it. You know, I've always liked, you know, rock and roll music. I mean, I was, you know, an early teen when the Beatles were coming up. So, you know, 3 chords in a song is, and just, yeah, as I say, there's so many great musicians in LA, and you can see them, you know, you can see them up close. And now there's a place near me called McCabe's Guitar Store, which is in Santa Monica. And you can see these fantastic musicians there. And then, you know, Jackson Browne will show up and do a little kind of few numbers and stuff. So yeah, I love all that. And I guess when you're trying to learn to play guitar, you realize that, you know, somebody like Bob Dylan can make 3 chords just sound so interesting.
They go a long way.
Oh God, or Neil Young, those people, you know, they're talking about formative years. Those songs were so much a sort of part of my, you know, teens and childhood, that, you know, just seeing the genius of those guys, because, you know, the chords are the same, but it's what they do with those chords and the lyrics and stuff. So yeah, I'm still trying. I'm still trying to get, you know, B minor.
That's all that counts. So you're usually cast as the bad guy, a vampire or a villain. Are you a fan of horror? Like, what are your favorite films, even if not?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah, there's a movie. I don't know if you know. Do you know Don't Look Now?
I'm not familiar with it.
It was there was a guy called Nick Rogue. He was a cameraman. This is way back in the sort of 60s and 70s. There was a movie called Performance, which he directed, with Mick Jagger as sort of drugged out rock and roller. It's a weird and wonderful movie.
Oh,
but he did a movie called Don't Look Now, and it's based on a Daphne du Maurier book, I think. And it's got Donald Sutherland, Julie Christie, and it's all set in Venice. And I remember seeing it in some art house movie in London, North London, and I just thought it was brilliant. Don't Look Now. And then as a kid, I used to watch those like Hammer horror stuff. They'd show up on the BBC, you know, late at night and stuff.
Still watch
like
those.
That. Christopher Lee and, you know, all that lot. Yeah, they're great. Yeah,
they are
fun.
So what is your favorite genre to work in yourself personally? Do you have
I don't really have I'd like to do some I haven't done theater for a long time. I keep on thinking I'll get a one-man show.
That would be amazing.
Well, it would for me, but I don't know if the audience would have a good time.
You got 3 tickets right here.
I'm about to say you got 3 tickets right here.
All right, we'll do it. Coming to a living room near you. But yeah, that I might, maybe I'll get that off the ground at one point. I don't know. I'm always saying I will, but I never get around to it. But yeah, maybe some more theater. But yeah, it's been weird, this whole COVID thing. You know, it sort of shut everything down. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to reopen, in what form it will take, or whether it will change things. I mean, theater has just been, it's just shut down completely. I don't know how you reopen. I'm sure they'll come up with creative ways to do it, but I'm not sure what they are just yet. But yeah, I think that feeling of, being in a room full of other people, having the same experience is going to be maybe even more powerful after all this is done. I hope so. I mean, my daughter's she's a musician. She's studying cello, and they're kind of finding ways to perform, but it's just sort of shifted everything, our understanding of the world. I never thought that I'd be in this situation. I find it very unnerving. I wake up and think, oh yeah, we're in the same situation that we were yesterday. I sort of forget about it, but it's
right.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've got to prevail, and we've got to persevere, and things will get better. And I'm happy that my kids are getting on with their lives. But as a school kid, as a teenager, I would have gone off the rails. I think I would have found it really hard.
I mean, this seems, for actors, this is someone speaking from the outside looking in, of course, this would seem like a great time to get into voice acting, working from home, set yourself up a booth at home, maybe. Seems like that'd be a booming.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's going to go, don't you? Is that, and I know there's a couple of like apps that you can use so that you can, it's like you're there real time with the people on the other end, so that they can give you notes, and the sound quality is so good that they can use it. I'm not that up to speed on all that stuff, and I was looking into it the other day, and I suddenly thought, well, yeah, maybe I should get it. I'll download this app, I'll put it in my little closet out the back there, and I'll do it. And then I thought, well, what if I'm in a session and the guy next door starts his lawnmower up? I'm screwed, and then I've wasted somebody's time. So I thought, well, I might have to rethink that, but I'm sure that's the way things are going. I once did a TV show. It was called The Neighbors. It was on ABC, and one of the directors said, "Oh, we want you to sing the opening song." And I was so excited. I was so happy to do this. So they sent me this sort of rough track, and I was up in Santa Barbara with my iPad and a little sponge box, and I remember just sort of doing the song in my hotel room in my underpants in Santa Barbara, and they broadcast it. And every time I heard this, I think, this is brilliant. There I am in my underpants in Santa Barbara, and I'm on network television. It's fantastic. So yeah, all things are possible, right?
Right. I'm going to have to go look up that song after we get off the call here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's an image you might want to get out of your head.
Sounds comfortable to me.
It was comfortable. Yeah, well, the time of COVID, right? Nobody's wearing, fancy pants anymore.
Yeah, I'm not going to stand up. So you work with your voice a lot. Do you take any extra measures to protect your moneymaker? Do you do any exercises or do any?
No, not really. No, no, I don't. That thing with video games and the shouting can get a bit challenging sometimes, because you sound a bit ragged at the end of it. But I haven't really done any like permanent damage. But I know actors, you can get nodules and stuff like that, so you have to be a little bit careful about it. No, not really. I don't smoke anymore. That was always good for Tony J talking. I mean, he had his own subwoofer, didn't he? Do you know what I mean? But he'd
Yeah.
smoke about 3 packs a day. I think that always helped.
It gives you the
but
radio
yeah.
voice.
Yeah, he was in a league of his own. But yeah, so I think that was his preparation, was, you know, a few Marlboro.
So if there was an announcement tomorrow that the franchise was going to be rebooted, would Simon Templeman be interested in reprising his role?
Oh well, shouldn't I say for the right price at this point? but secretly the answer is yes, of course. Especially if like Amy had anything to do with it. Yeah, I think it would be fun. It would. Yeah, and also I might know what's going on now too. You know, now I've seen the games and stuff. I might do a better job.
No, I think those cameos will start dropping.
Oh, really? I was talking to somebody, I think it was on a cameo, and they were asking about is it Dragon Age, the game Dragon Age? And
right.
I did some voices for that, and I think they did 2 or 3 of the games. And again, I think it was a cameo thing, and I thought, well, I better find out what I did, you know. So I looked up the games, and I was playing the same character, but I think I must have forgotten, and I changed the accent, which is which is, you know, I mean, things like that you really should know better. But yeah, so yeah, the answer will be yes, especially to Kain. Yeah, it'd be fun.
So I think we've held you hostage long enough. If no one helped, do you guys have anything else for Simon before we cut him loose?
Just a kind of bland question. What's just some of your regular hobbies, like a regular day in the life of Simon Templeman, like let's say pre-COVID?
Oh, yeah, I got a back injury when I was a young actor, and it was a nightmare. So, and people used to say to me, you know, when they'd see me sort of bent double with my back all messed up, you should do yoga. And I never listened to them because I thought it was so boring and stuff. But I wish I had, because I do yoga now to try and keep me in shape, and it's good for my head, and it's great for my back. And my son, who's 28, he said the other day he got a bad back, and I thought, oh no, don't go there. Do you know what I mean? And so yeah, yoga would be very much a part of my day if I could do it. I think it's just spending an hour thinking about something, being focused on something, you know, giving it your 100% concentration. And I think we were talking about that earlier on, how therapeutic that is.
Right.
You know, talking about T.C. Carson, and he was saying that, you know, he poured all that energy and emotion into what he was doing in the booth, and that was sort of therapy for him. And I think yoga does that for me in many ways, you know, because you're just thinking about something, you know, you're giving it your absolute concentration. I think
right.
I would say that would be a good day. And then, you know, doing C, G, and F again, trying doing that, playing the guitar.
Okay.
So do you have anything on the horizon? Where can folks find you? Do you have a website, Instagram, all that stuff?
I don't, you know, I'm trying to wean myself off the socials too. I'm off Facebook, I'm off Twitter, I'm on Instagram because of my kids. But I was, what's that guy, Jaron Lanier? Do you know who he is? He's like some weird and wonderful kind of computer scientist guy, and he's a kind of futurist thinker. And so I thought I'm trying to be less on my phone. You know what I mean? Because I realize it's such a rabbit hole, and I don't feel good after I've been on my phone for 90 minutes, and I find it very easy to get there. So I'm trying to reduce that, because this whole kind of COVID thing, and we're all stuck inside, and this, what's going on kind of globally, I find very strange and unsettling. And I think that the way technology, I think it can be, it can be sort of destructive. And I mean, I like discovering things which I don't know. And the trouble about curated sites, or once somebody's got all your data, they think they know what you like and what you're interested in seeing. And I'm interested in finding stuff which I don't know about and surprises me. And I think that is, well, I'm going off now, but I think there's something exciting about that. It's when you discover something in yourself which you didn't know was there.
Right.
Is illuminating to who you are. And I think oh boy, I'm disappearing up my own fundament. But as an actor, is when you if you find something unexpected, there's such pleasure in that and such joy in that, that I think it's good to sort of follow that, and that's what worries me about me spending too much time on my socials and Twitter and all that, and that idea that everyone's got your data and that you're just you're kind of being watched all the time. That freaks me out a bit.
Agreed.
Really?
Oh
Yeah.
yes,
I was watching,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, because I was watching this show. It's called Alone, and I'm completely addicted to it. And it's, they drop like 10 people off in these terrible places like the Arctic, and they just have to survive. And I find it absolutely brilliant and compelling because they're reduced to a very primitive state. And I mean, I know it's a reality show and it's a TV show and everything, but it touches these people in the most, primitive spot. It's fascinating. I think it's on Netflix. There's a bunch of them. And there's a guy who's got a bow and arrow, and he kills a moose with a bow and arrow, and then he kills a wolverine with a bow and arrow, and they're just forced to survive. And I find that fascinating, and because it's quintessentially kind of human. And I guess, I mean, does that relate to the games in some way, that I don't know, it's in your imagination, but I've been watching that series and I find it fascinating.
Definitely, I can agree with that. And we were just speaking before you entered the room about how we think everyone should have a VPN just to protect their privacy from, because the internet is always grabbing your information and sharing it here, sharing it there, bouncing it off of this, and giving you, like you said, what you think you want. And and usually that's not what they give you is not necessarily what you need.
Well, yeah, exactly. This whole Facebook thing about disinformation and fake stuff. I mean, it's becoming very sort of, I don't know, dystopian. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
I drove down the street with Roz the other day, and you'll see, I mean, there are encampments here of people living on the street in tents. If you go by the VA, there's a row of tents with American flags on it, and these guys are living on the street, and then you'll get some $250,000 Rolls Royce drive past, and you just think it doesn't make sense. There's something kind of off about this. I don't know how we get back to something simpler. And I guess that's what programs like Alone, that sort of chord they strike in me. And I guess maybe that relates back to the games, is that there's, they usually take place in the past or some sort of, idea of the past. And there's something very comforting about that to us, because
Definitely.
the future changes so fast, and especially in these last sort of few years, that everything is terribly uncertain. What do you think?
Definitely uncertain. And the show you're referencing just touches on simplicity, and games themselves are an escape, just to try to get us out of all the everyday mess. So I guess
Yes, right.
that's how they are to work together. I could see that.
There seems to be real anxiety. And going back to thinking about Blade Runner, I mean, that seems to be so prescient. So, I mean, he was forward thinking. I mean, the images in that movie, and then driving down around LA, it's just like, oh my God, I'm in Blade Runner.
Are
there's
imitating
guys
life.
living under. Yeah. And that was what, 20, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah. What's funny is doesn't Blade Runner take place in 2020?
Does it? Oh, I'll have to look that up.
Around this point in time.
It's about the same year.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That would be spooky. That would be so spooky.
Oh man, I think it is. I'm gonna have to look it up now.
Me too. Me too. You guys are the best. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you. I've really enjoyed doing it.
Well, thanks, hey, Simon. Anytime that if you get any kind of project coming on, our doors are always open to you.
All right, brilliant. You guys take care. It's been fun.
All right, you too, my friend.
You
Have a
too.
good night.
All right, cheers. Stay safe. All right, all the best.